המבדיל בין קודש לחול. יאי לי 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 לי, יאי לי 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 לי, יאי לי 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 לי, יאי לי 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 לי, יאי לי 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 לי.
Shavua Tov. Thank you so much to Cantor Mychal B for leading Havdalah as we transition from the week to week, from Shabbat to the workaday week, from one year to the next, a way to set the mood for this sacred moment. Ani ledodi vedodi li. I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine. This month, this week, this sacred evening of Selichot, this time of Elul, Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, the first letter of each word of the most famous verse from the book of the Song of Songs, Ani ledodi vedodi li. In the context of romantic love, the flame set ablaze when two souls find their inner spark grow bright by way of the presence of each other. A feeling, I imagine, very present in the hearts of Rabbi Zosmer and Ben not long ago when they stood under the chuppah, the wedding canopy. But the message of Elul is far more than just romantic love. This time of year signals a time of drawing near to God, from whom we've grown estranged in the year gone by, and now on the cusp of the high holidays, seeking God's nearness, God's presence, and God's comfort. As Jews, our spiritual selves are measured bein adam lemakom, between humanity and God, and this evening we seek our beloved in the heavens. We seek to be drawn near to our beloved, to whom we are too often estranged. But not just bein adam lemakom, to whom we seek nearness, but also bein adam lechavero, between one person and another. At all times, but especially at this time, it's a measure of our spiritual selves. The joys we experience connecting to one another, the tears that are shed when we experience another in sorrow, and the laughter that comes when we're able to rejoice in the presence of another. Ani ledodi vedodi li, a reminder that the divine is not merely found in the vertical reach to the heavens, but in the horizontal tug of the presence of another soul. To recognize another's humanity, to have our own humanity recognized, this is a calling and the challenge and the opportunity of this time of year. To be brought close, ani ledodi vedodi li, to each other, to community, to our best selves. The vocation of a rabbi consists of many things: to be a teacher, to be a preacher, to be a religious role model, to represent the synagogue and the Jewish community in the public sphere, and much, much more. And on each and all of these fronts, in Rabbi Shana Zosmer, Park Avenue Synagogue has found an extraordinary rabbi. Rabbi, we look forward to you leading us, inspiring us, and revealing to us the riches of our tradition through you. I want to acknowledge your parents who are here, Kurt and Michelle, not just for being here this evening, but for having produced such an extraordinary human being, a leader whose manifold gifts have been already so warmly embraced by our community. We're deeply honored by your presence. And to your brother David, whom we will always welcome warmly, as long as Shana says it's okay. And of course, to your beloved Ben, whom we look forward to getting to know and embracing in the years ahead. And yet, for all the callings of a rabbi, there is none more delicate, more demanding, and more sacred than the role of rabbi as pastor. The one charge, the responsibility to bring close and be drawn close to the divine spark within another, to be invited into the life of another person in joy and sorrow, in the mundane, in the midst of life's passages, as we enter this world and as we leave it. This is the essence of every clergy person's calling: to care for people's souls, to challenge them, to guide them, to exist in trusted dialogue with congregant and colleague. It is the core of who we are. It is the pastoral calling that is the soul of a rabbi. Rabbi Zosmer, you are a master educator, a preacher with talents well beyond your years, a community leader with executive functioning skills to which I can only aspire. You were chosen as our rabbi for all these reasons. We are all so excited to turn to you for leadership. But it is as a pastor, as a person and presence with whom we can confide, trust, and be trusted, be vulnerable, and let our humanity come through and invite into our lives. It is these gifts that make you our spiritual leader. Your wisdom, your love of Torah, your pastoral presence, your willingness to make yourself vulnerable and teach us how to do the same. These are the distinctive qualities that only you have and are ready for embrace here at Park Avenue, I hope for many, many years to come. I am personally excited to have you as a colleague, to learn from you, and to grow by way of being in your presence. And I know I speak for all of us here when I share with you how deeply excited we are for your installation this evening and for the years ahead. And so it's with this sentiment that it's such an honor to welcome our scholar for the evening, Rabbi Mychal Springer. Rabbi Springer is a teacher and mentor to many, but for the purposes of this evening, a beloved teacher to Rabbi Zosmer. Rabbi Springer, Mychal Springer, is a manager of Clinical Pastoral Education at New York-Presbyterian Hospital. She founded the Center for Pastoral Education at the Jewish Theological Seminary in Manhattan. Over a 10-year period, she saw an intensive hospice chaplaincy training program in collaboration with the Metropolitan Jewish Health System. She began her career as a hospital chaplain here in New York City in the 90s, was a director of the Department of Pastoral Care at Beth Israel Medical Center. Her publications are manyfold, including Sisters in Mourning, Daughters Reflecting on Care, Loss, and Meaning, as well as Jewish End-of-Life Care in a Virtual Age, Our Traditions Reimagined. Rabbi Springer's rabbinate has set sail to countless other rabbinic careers in the conservative movement, American Jewry, and we are all strengthened by your labors. We turn to you, Rabbi, to be our teacher on this special evening of Selichot, and as we honor the Torah of Rabbi Zosmer.
Thank you, Rabbi Cosgrove, Rabbi Zosmer, Rabbi Zuckerman, Ben Zosmer, the Goldkopf family. How wonderful to be here. I was last with Shana and Ben at their wedding, so I feel like this is a continuation of the celebration as we mark your installation tonight. What an incredible moment. I was with Rabbi Zosmer when she was a student at the Jewish Theological Seminary. It was my honor to be one of her teachers, and I'm thrilled to be able to be here this evening with all of you. I taught at Park Avenue Synagogue. When I first came to New York in 1987, my dear friend Lizzie, who's right over here, Lizzie Lyman-Kryam, introduced me to Livia Strauss, and I began teaching second grade here at Park Avenue Synagogue and remained here for 10 years in different capacities and have a very warm place in my heart for this community. And a particular warm place in my heart for Pat Fingeroth and Jim Fingeroth. Pat was the chair of the advisory board of the Center for Pastoral Education that you heard I founded. And Pat, I'm sorry you can't be here in person tonight, but I hear that you are watching from home, so I just want to say hello. Okay, so you have sheets? Great. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the sheets. Do people at home have access in any form to the sheets? No. Okay, so I'm going to be bilingual there. I begin the teaching tonight, which I've called The Complexity of Memory During the Yamim Noraim. Are some people looking for sheets? No? Okay. Rosh Hashanah is known as Yom HaZikaron, the day of memory, of remembrance. And memory plays an enormous role in the Yamim Noraim in general. And I would say not a role that is unambiguously joyful. For many of us, it is a complex experience with memory on the high holidays. And that's what I want to unpack a little bit here this evening. I start with Eric Kandel's In Search of Memory, The Emergence of a New Science of Mind. Eric Kandel was born in Vienna in 1929, and he was at Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons and won the 2000 Nobel Prize in the physiological basis of memory storage in neurons. So in this passage that I have put on the page here, it begins with looking at how memory storage itself is this miraculous thing which we have come to understand recently. And I won't read you the full passage, but in the middle of the first paragraph, the sentence that begins, memory. Memory enables us to solve the problems we confront in everyday life by marshaling several facts at once, an ability that is vital to problem solving. We might take it for granted that several facts at once are in our mind, are held in our memory. For those of us who have ADD, we know that holding short-term, lots of facts in our minds can actually be kind of challenging. So there's an intimate way in which we are familiar with the way that our particular memory works and doesn't work. But the fact that we can marshal several facts at once is itself a miraculous piece of what it is to be created human. In a larger sense, I'm now continuing in the passage, in a larger sense, memory provides our lives with continuity. It gives us a coherent picture of the past that puts current experience in perspective. If you think about when we don't remember something, we don't have a sense of the continuity. So that experience of continuity, which is where coherence comes from, where meaning-making comes from, begins in memory. The picture may not be rational or accurate, but it persists without the binding force. But without the binding force of memory, experience would be splintered. So we're not just talking about remembering facts for the sake of facts. Using these facts to build a story gives us a sense of where we came from and where we're going and what it means. And without that memory, it becomes splintered in a way that is disorienting. We'll get to that in a moment. In the second paragraph here, we're going to look at the joy and the trauma that comes with memory. Our memory processes serve us best when we can easily recall the joyful events of our lives and dilute the emotional impact of traumatic events and disappointments. But sometimes horrific memories persist and damage people's lives, as happens in post-traumatic stress disorder, a condition suffered by some people who have experienced at firsthand the terrible events of the Holocaust, or war, rape, or natural disaster. Eric Kandel was a child in Vienna during Kristallnacht, and he had a truck that he received for his birthday just days before Kristallnacht. And when he had to vacate his apartment, when he was ordered to go elsewhere, he left his truck behind. And his interest in memory is bound up with this first memory of his joy playing with this truck on his birthday. And a couple of days later, his whole world being turned on its head. So we continue on the next page. Memory is essential not only for the continuity of individual identity, but also for the transmission of culture and for the evolution and continuity of societies over centuries. All human accomplishments from antiquity to modern times are products of a shared memory accumulated over centuries. So we're going to come back to that. As Jews, we know what it is to be connected to a culture that is accumulated over time. It's very important here that when we're talking about memory, we're both talking about individual memory and collective memory. And as Jews, we understand that if we only have individual memory, we are contextless. And I'll return to that. Finally, this last paragraph here, Kandel talks about memory loss. And very dear people in my life have lived with memory loss. It's part of what got me interested in speaking about memory and teaching about memory and caring for people with memory loss. But we've just gone through all the ways that our memories orient us, or when they're traumatic, disorient us. But the process of losing memory, of living without the sense of continuity, can be a very destabilizing experience in people's lives. And when we gather communally and we talk about memory, it's very important that we understand that among us are people who are grappling with memory loss, are people who love people who are grappling with memory loss. And so we can't make assumptions about this being an easy process. We can't invite people to remember without knowing that for some of us, that's impossible. So we come to Yizkor. I put the Yizkor prayer right here so you would see it. I put it in the feminine for my mom. My mother lived with Alzheimer's at the end of her life. My father lived with Alzheimer's at the end of his life. And the book, which I co-wrote with Dr. Suyan Pak, who is the dean of Union Theological Seminary, and a group of women, all of us had lost our mothers, and we became sisters in mourning. And the story that I told there is the story of loving my mother in her memory loss and caring for her at the end of her life and grieving for her. So when I come to Yizkor, I'm commanded to remember. By remembering my mom and the other people in my life whom I love, and being in a community where we are all engaged in remembering, we establish continuity and we access meaning. We continue to heal relationships. Just because somebody has died doesn't mean that that relationship has ended. And through those experiences of remembering, the relationship continues. When we have a communal moment where we're invited to remember, it can alleviate our anxiety about forgetting. But it can also heighten the anxiety of those who can't remember, who are wrestling with memory. Because of this dual nature of being invited to remember, I've moved towards wanting a deeper and broader and more inclusive understanding of what it is we're being asked to do when we're told that this is the day of remembering. So if we look at the top of page 3, you'll see a little snippet from the Amidah on the Yamim Noraim. Zochrenu l'chayim, melech chafetz b'chayim, v'chotvenu b'sefer ha'chayim l'ma'ancha Elohim chayim. Remember us for life, our ruler, our sovereign, who desires life, and inscribe us in the book of life for your sake, living God. So this shift here is from our being told to remember to our acknowledging God as the one who remembers. For me, that shift is where breath enters back in here, where there's room to be in relationship. Because when God is the one who is holding the memory, some of the pressure on us is relieved. A different kind of pressure comes. I'll come to that in a moment. But with God who remembers, whether I remember exactly is not as important. And how does God remember? In this line from the Amidah, we describe God as Melech Chafetz B'Chayim, God who wants life. So this remembering is for the sake of life. Now the reason that I say that is because when we look at the Unatan HaTokef, which is probably our most famous high holiday prayer, you may not know it by its name, but maybe you do, because it begins Unatan HaTokef, Kedushat Hayom. We lend power to the holiness of this day. And what most people remember from this prayer is down number 4 there in the middle, which is the Dalet on the Hebrew. B'Rosh Hashanah yikatevun, u'v'yom Tzom Kippur yechatemun. On Rosh Hashanah it is inscribed, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. Kama yavrun v'chama yibareun, mi yichya u'mi yamut, mi v'kitzo u'mi lo v'kitzo. How many shall pass away, and how many shall be born? Who shall live, and who shall die? Who in good time, and who not in good time? So those are powerful words, and they can frighten us. The piece that I skipped, which is the part that I bolded, I want to come back to. Because here memory is used as God remembering and not missing anything. V'tizkor kol hanishkachot, v'tiftach et sefer hazichronot, u'me'alav yikareh v'chotam yad kol adam bo. You remember all that is forgotten. You open the book of records, and from it all shall be read. In it lies each person's insignia. For many of us, that can feel frightening, to have God remember everything. I know as a child, I quaked a lot. Carrie Doering, who is a pastoral theologian, talks about embedded beliefs and deliberative beliefs. Embedded beliefs are the ones that are in our kishkas. They come up whether we actually believe them or not because they are so strongly in us. That's the embedded part. So often when we're in the hospital, we start praying to God in ways that we may not ordinarily pray to God because we're just hoping that we'll be lifted up. It's our greatest wish. That usually comes out of that embedded place. And this prayer comes out of an embedded place. Who shall live and who shall die? And this book, this big book where God hasn't forgotten anything. And our embedded beliefs can often lead us to feel that we're going to be punished. But I would say that if we've hung in there, if you're here this evening, you've hung in there, and there's room for deliberative beliefs, beliefs that we come to through careful consideration, making room for a loving God, where that looking at all the memories doesn't say we're going to be condemned, doesn't say we're going to be punished, but actually God wants life. And there has to be room in the evolution of our beliefs to come into some kind of relationship with a loving God. If you're not quite there, I hope that you find partners who help you work towards that. Because I really don't believe in a God who's marking things down to wait to take life away from us. We know that life ends. We know that life is precious. We know that it's limited. But I don't believe that it's punishment. I do believe in the kind of discernment that we need to do to look at what we've done that is good and what we've done that is not, to change our ways. And having a God who remembers everything doesn't only have to be a God who's looking to take us down. I'll keep working with that in a couple of moments. At the bottom of the page, you see this passage from Brachot. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi further advised, and be careful to continue to respect an elder who has forgotten his Torah knowledge due to circumstances beyond his control. As we say, both the tablets of the covenant and the broken tablets are placed in the ark. God doesn't cast us aside. God doesn't cast us aside for our deeds. We're given every opportunity to reflect and return. God doesn't cast us aside when our memory is not intact. So if learning Torah is a high, high mitzvah, and forgetting Torah is a great sadness, we don't turn aside the one who forgets. The tablets and the broken tablets are side by side in the Aron, and we treasure them. And we have to live our lives with human beings with that same spirit. I want to take you through now one of the middle brachot from the Rosh Hashanah Amidah. So the Rosh Hashanah Amidah has Malchuyot, about sovereignty, Zichronot, remembrance, and Shofarot, the shofar blasts. And I've given you a very abridged version of it here on page 4, because we have a whole panoply of memory that comes to us here. So, Ata zocher ma'aseh olam, God, you remember the dealings of today's world, and you also consider the behavior of all those who lived in earlier times. And in the bold I write, the piece I bolded, Ki ein shichecha lifnei chisech vodecha, ve'ein nistar mineged einecha. For there is no forgetfulness before your throne, before the throne of your glory, and there is nothing hidden from your eyes. Now, again, we can have the harsh stare, and we can have a loving gaze. I believe that when nothing is hidden, there is lots of room for love and forgiveness. When nothing is hidden, when truly nothing is hidden. That's the promise here. And the language, I didn't excerpt this piece of it, but just after this, it says, Zichron liyom rishon. This is a remembrance to the first day. This remembrance goes back to the very beginning of creation, all that is. So when we show up, we're participating in everything that is in this world. There's something about taking our atomized selves and putting ourselves in the spectrum of all of creation. That's the divine lens. And in that lens, there is room for us to be remembered and to remember as best we can all of our deeds in the context of a brit, of a covenant that God makes with us. So further down, where you see more bold, V'zachar lanu Adonai Eloheinu et habrit ve'et hachesed ve'et hashvu'ah asher nishbata l'Avraham Avinu b'har Moriah. Remember on our behalf, Adonai, our God, the covenant, the kindness, and the oath which you swore to our father Avraham on Mount Moriah. The brit, the covenant, the chesed, the love, and the shvuah, the oath. The brit says, we didn't invent this relationship with God. We came into it. It was a covenant that was established before us and that we were invited into, either at birth or along the way as we found our way into this synagogue. We were invited into the brit. It is a covenant. It is permanent. It is God holding fast to us and us holding fast to God, which is how we know that no matter what we've done, no matter what God remembers about us, it's okay. And the chesed, the love, for the things that we did wrong, for when we know that we've gone astray, the promise of God's love is here. And the shvuah, the oath. This is a permanent binding of God and us, just as God was bound to Abraham at the binding of Isaac. Now, the rabbis do something really amazing. The next piece that I bolded here is V'chavash rachamav la'asot ritzoncha belevav shalem, ken yichbeshu rachamecha et ka'ascha me'aleinu. As Abraham suppressed his compassion to do God's will with a whole heart, so may your compassion suppress your anger against us. This is very paradoxical. Abraham suppressed his compassion. Just like Abraham suppressed his compassion, you do the opposite. You suppress your anger so that your compassion comes. That is the rabbis at their best. That is the rabbis taking something that is, you could do it the exact opposite way. Just like Abraham had to suppress his compassion, we have to suppress our compassion and go with judgment. But in this prayer about remembering, no. The anger has to be suppressed, and the compassion has to be brought up. What a beautiful rabbinic move. If you ever wondered why I'm a rabbinic Jew. Okay, so let's move to page 5. Yosef Chaim Yerushalmi, another Columbia person, wrote this gorgeous book, Zachor, Jewish History and Jewish Memory. And in the later edition, he has a postscript called Reflections on Forgetting. So he talks about two kinds of memory. He talks about nime, which I'm probably mispronouncing, and anamnesis, which I think I'm relatively in the ballpark on. So nime, or whatever it is, memory, is that which is unbroken and continuous. And anamnesis is that which is forgotten and recalled. And in this passage that I've put on the page here, what Yerushalmi says is that, and this is now 5 lines up from the bottom, all true knowledge is anamnesis. All true learning, an effort to recall what has been forgotten. There is a curious parallel to this in the Talmud, Tractate Nida, where we are told that the fetus, the valad, in the womb, knows the entire Torah and can see from one end of the world to the other. But at the very moment of birth, an angel comes and slaps the infant on the mouth. In later legend, he kisses him, whereupon he immediately forgets everything and, alas, must learn the Torah anew. This anamnesis, this memory as needing to recall that which has been forgotten, which the rabbis say is all of Torah for all of us. It is not just those of us who wrestle with memory who need to be recalling what they've lost. All of us, in remembering, are recalling what we've lost. Remembering is a liminal state that always involves forgetting. There is a vulnerability that we bring to it, the very desire to remember, the hope that I will remember. This is a moment I don't want to forget. This liminality, and ultimately the proclamation that everything we learned in the womb, we forgot coming out. As we cross a threshold, we forget everything. And when we encounter it again, there's some little part of us that knows it was once ours. And that is a coming home that remembering gives us. So when we come back and suddenly we remember, we know that it was once ours and it is now ours again. And I would posit that in doing that, we can also know that we will forget. One way or another, we will forget. But just like when we remember, we have to know that we forgot. When we forget, we can remember that we once knew, and it brings a comfort. So a little more Yerushalmi. He then says, this astonishing assumption, he's working with the Devarim, the Deuteronomy quote that I have up above, take care lest you forget your God and fail to keep the divine commandments, rules, and laws which I enjoin upon you this day. So we're constantly told to remember, commanded to remember. So he says, this astonishing assumption that an entire people can not only be admonished to remember, but held absolutely responsible for forgetting, is made as though it were self-evident. When we say that a people remembers, we are really saying that a past has been actively transmitted to the present generation, and that this past has been accepted as meaningful. If we haven't received it, we can't remember it. We can only remember what we've experienced as individuals or what we've inherited as a culture, what we've inherited as the brit that we are in, that holds us. That remembering only comes in a communal, in a passing along. And so what he ends here by saying is all the admonitions to remember and not to forget by which the Jewish people felt itself addressed would have been to no avail if the rites and historical narratives had not been canonized as Torah, literally teaching in the broadest sense, and if Torah in turn had not constantly renewed itself as tradition. This problem with remembering becomes acute when we think it is about remembering alone. Remembering must be done communally. It must be passed along so that the kind of remembering that Candell was talking about, of being oriented through the remembering, that is a communal remembering that gives coherence to our lives. And when we forget our individual memories, if we are held in community and held by a God who remembers us, with that loving remembering that the rabbis taught, where the love conquers whatever anger there might be. That remembering that happens communally, that is offered to us freely, holds us regardless of the state of our individual memories. We know that there are many things that happen in our lives that affect our capacity. But our capacity as individuals is not the point here. It is our capacity as people who are located inside something greater than ourselves, a relationship with the divine, a relationship with a community that holds these memories and keeps us safe. That's the memory of Yom HaZikaron, a memory that begins at the beginning of time, at the beginning of creation, and goes all the way through, that remembers us when we can't remember, that remembers us when we wish there would be things that we would forget, and brings a loving gaze, a brit, a covenant that sustains us and lets us know that whatever our individual conditions are, the communal is big enough to hold us. God's presence is felt in community in a way that it will never be felt to us alone, and there's a safekeeping that happens there. I pray that this Yamim Noraim, the season of penitence that we're coming into with Selichot tonight, that you find ways of accessing your memories, both your own and communally, so that you can feel held and supported, and that loving embrace that is both a gift from God and a gift that we give one another when we show up as a kehillah. Shavua Tov.
Rabbi Springer, thank you so much for your beautiful Torah. It's a great pleasure to call on our chairman, Mark, first.
Thank you, Rabbi Springer, for your teachings. We will have fond memories of tonight. We look forward to your next visit here at Park Avenue Synagogue. So 1 year ago, we embarked on a search for a rabbi to join the esteemed clergy team here at Park Avenue Synagogue. At a minimum, this rabbi had to be learned and wise, thoughtful, passionate, and caring. We also needed to find someone that was a fit with and exemplified the values of Park Avenue Synagogue. We chose Rabbi Shana Zosmer. For starters, this person had to understand and be grounded in the traditions of the past, but also be forward-thinking about where the world of Judaism is headed in the years to come. Rabbi Zosmer's JTS education, experience at Temple Aliyah, coupled with her youth, energy, and perspective, more than exceeded this requirement. The new rabbi also needed to both agree with and engender our inclusive approach to community. Now, while I am sure Rabbi Cosgrove will credit Rabbi Zosmer's time in California and Ben's time at the Dodgers as the reason for the inclusivity, I, and with full bias, will credit Rabbi Zosmer's Penn education and Philadelphia upbringing. William Penn named the city of brotherly love based on the Greek words phileo for love and adelphos for brother, and envisioned it as a city of religious tolerance and inclusion. And Rabbi Zosmer is filling the shoes of our prior rabbi who left to lead a congregation in the Philadelphia suburbs. Coincidence? I think not. Finally, we sought a rabbi who understood and connected with our community. This was an easy one since Rabbi Zosmer had interned at Park Avenue Synagogue and knew us well. Yes, Rabbi, you chose and you were chosen to become part of the PAS family, chosen to be a leader and friend of our beloved community for the years to come. And as you so thoughtfully articulated in a recent sermon, perhaps this will be where you will identify the life that you were chosen to live and the things that only you can do, why you are special and the reason you are here. We can't wait to watch and share with you the successes that we know you will have. On behalf of the officers and Board of Trustees of Park Avenue Synagogue, we welcome you, we welcome Ben back to PAS to lead, to teach, to inspire, to counsel, and to comfort us. And thank you for choosing us. Please join me in welcoming Rabbi Shana Zosmer.
Thank you, Mark. There are so many people I want to thank. To my family, my husband Ben, and my parents and my brother, thank you so much for being here tonight and being here for me always. To Rabbi Springer, thank you so much for your beautiful teaching, as always, and for being here for my installation, as you've shown up for me lovingly at so many occasions and important milestones in my life. To Mark first, and the officers and board and search committee who chose me, thank you for putting your trust in me and believing in me. Thank you for welcoming me into the community with so many sweet emails and phone calls and coffees and lunches and dinners. I just have felt so warmly welcomed by all of you. And you really are some of the most invested lay leaders I have ever met in my entire life. To the clergy team here at Park Avenue Synagogue, Rabbi Cosgrove and Rabbi Zuckerman, I've gotten to call you two both mentors for years already, and now I get to work alongside you and learn from you every single day, and I feel very, very fortunate. Cantor Schwartz and Cantor Davis and Cantor Reisner and Cantor to be Mychal B and Rabbi to be Kornsgold, the entire PAS staff team. I am so lucky to work with all of you, and you make coming into the office each day a joy. And most of all, I really want to thank this whole community for welcoming me, welcoming Ben, welcoming both of us. We are so excited to keep getting to know this community and to keep becoming part of the Park Avenue family. But as you know, I'm really not new here. I started as an intern in 2017, and even when I left for LA 2 years later, this community continued to have a very special place in my heart, even from across the country. I always kept an eye on what was going on. I would watch some live streams. I would be humming the Park Avenue tunes to myself as I got ready for Shabbat. I'm so happy to be back, not exactly new, but renewed. In the 3 years that I was away, this community has grown and changed, and I would like to think that I have grown and changed as well, and here I am, back in the same place, but with a new perspective. That's what happens when we return. To a familiar place, to a familiar holiday, to a familiar season of the calendar, to a familiar set of prayers or Torah stories. It's not new, and we're not new, but the experience is renewed, and we are renewed. I want to share a story with you since I was in LA for the past 3 years. This is a story by Rabbi Ed Feinstein, who's the longtime senior rabbi of Valley Beth Shalom in LA. So there was once a man who had grown really tired of his life. He was tired of his family. He was tired of his community, his work. He was bored of it all. So he asked God to let him leave this world and go to paradise. God agreed and showed him the path he would need to take to get to paradise. The man set out for the journey. So nighttime approached, he got a little bit tired, he went to rest under a tree, but he wanted to make sure that in the morning he would know which direction to keep walking. So he took off his shoes and he placed them by the side of the road with the tips of his shoes pointing in the right direction for him to keep walking the next day. All he would have to do when he woke up was jump into the shoes and keep going. But in the middle of the night, something unexpected happened. Perhaps it was just a squirrel that pushed his shoes and turned them around. When the man woke up, he was eager to continue on his journey to paradise, so he slipped on his shoes and began walking, completely unaware that he was actually returning home. Midway through the day of walking, he saw a village, and he approached excitedly. He walked through the town, marveling at its beauty. It wasn't crowded and noisy like his old village, but instead filled with the sounds of joy and love. How wonderful that paradise was made to look like his home village. He wondered if there was a street similar to his street, and just where he thought it would be, there it was. Then he wondered if there might be a house like his house, and there it was. As he approached the house, a woman came to the door who looked exactly like his wife And amazingly, she called him by name and she invited him to dinner. Even though the house looked just like his old house, it was totally different. His old house was crowded, cluttered, filled with commotion. This house was homey and cozy and filled with life. The experience repeated itself when he went to work the next day, when he encountered his friends, when he went about his regular life. No one could convince him that he hadn't found paradise. The village was exactly the same, but his perspective was different. He was different. That's what happens when we return to the high holidays each year. The holidays are the same. The liturgy is the same. The Torah readings are the same. But we are not the same. Our experiences over the course of the year have shaped us, and hopefully we have grown and developed so that when Rosh Hashanah comes around again, it feels brand new, renewed. I am renewed here at Park Avenue Synagogue, returning, but a bit different, to a place that is also a bit different. And we approach the new year together, returning to Rosh Hashanah a bit different, to a year ahead that will be different than the one that has passed. Whenever we put the Torah back into the ark after reading it, we recite, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva chadesh yamenu kekedem. Turn us toward you, Adonai, and we will return to you. Make our days seem fresh as they once were. The commentators in our Machzor, our High Holy Day prayer book, explain that it's not actually a plea to return to a former state of perfection. We were never perfect. It's a plea for resilience, a plea for the ability to renew ourselves. Renew our perspective, which will make our days seem fresh as they once were. This is the theme of the season. We return to our community, we return to our prayers, we return to ourselves. We return and we are renewed. I wish you in advance a Shana Tova.
To the clergy team, if your name begins with Rabbi or Cantor or one day will, I invite you up. Rabbi, if you could stand here with your team around you. Hold on, David. I mean, that's nice in the background. So we surround you with blessings as you return as our leader, and we bestow upon you blessings. We'll read each reading in Hebrew or English, whichever you want. One thing I ask of Adonai, for this I yearn, that I may dwell in the house of Adonai all the days of my life, that I shall be permitted to enter God's sanctuary, where I shall behold divine beauty. Just read that. Mine is a faith.
Mine is the faith that I will surely see Adonai's goodness in the land of the living. Hope in Adonai and be strong. Hope in Adonai and take courage.
How I love your Torah. It is my study throughout the day.
I have sworn and will fulfill to keep your righteous ordinances.
Hillel Todd, be a disciple of Aaron, loving peace and pursuing peace, loving all people and drawing them closer to the Torah.
Shammai taught, make the study of Torah your primary occupation, say little, do much, and greet each person cheerfully.
מה אהבתי תורתך, כל היום היא שיחתי.
Please rise. Adonai and God, our God and God of our ancestors, source of all blessing, we pray that Rabbi Zalzmer, now a rabbi of this congregation, shall lead it and lead us with blessing of your Spirit. Grant Harav Shulamit Batya Bat Betzalel Umasha a wise heart, candor in speech, the courage to act decisively, and the strength to respond to every challenge with dignity. Give her the full measure of your compassion, that she may be the instrument of your ancient promise, ונתתי לכם רועים כליבי וראו אתכם דעה והשכל. I will give you shepherds after my own heart, who shall nurture you with knowledge and understanding. And let us all say, Amen.
ברכנו בברכה המשולשת בתורה הכתובה על ידי משה עבדיך האמורה מפי אהרון ובניו כהנים עם קדושך וישם לך שלום, שלום. May God lift up his countenance to you and grant you peace. Amen. Ken yehi ratzon.
You may be seated. Rabbi Zosmer, Yasher Koach to you, Mazal Tov. What a beautiful night for you. What a beautiful night for this community, for your family. Welcome, welcome. It's great to see you. Rabbi Springer, thank you for your teaching this evening. We turn now to our Selichot service. And I don't know, rabbis or cantors, how often this happens to you, but I often get running commentary from my mother through the live stream about either what I've said or what I'm wearing or how I looked, right? So she recently said to me, why don't you go get a new suit, right? So I said, sure. And I said, it's perfect timing because it's the holidays. And of course, we have a custom to buy something new, to wear something new. And it's not just to look nice, right? It is the idea that we want to wear something new, look special as we stand before God with the book of our deeds open. In the days ahead, we will spend hours and hours in prayer and self-reflection, hours of being vulnerable, truthful with ourselves. How do we actually prepare for an experience like that? So I want to share some Torah with you that I learned this summer in my own preparations for this season from Rabbi Dina Berkowitz. She teaches that in the Avodah service, a service that we will do in a few weeks on the afternoon of Yom Kippur, when the head priest, the Kohen Gadol, would commune with God in the Holy of Holies, that the priest was actually forbidden from entering that space in the clothes that he wore, the golden thread priestly vestments, but rather he had to change his clothes and wear the special white garments, the Bigdei Lavan, the white garment. Now, why is this detail of changing his clothes so important? Well, the rabbis teach us that the reason that the Kohen Gadol had to change out of his regular clothes as he was praying for, asking for forgiveness from the Jewish people, was that it was better not to remind God about the sin of the golden calf, which God would remember if God saw Aaron or the high priest in those gold vestments. So the Kohen Gadol's outerwear was there to send a message. And so too the clothes that we wear send a message and convey meaning. The idea that we arrive at these holidays on this eve of Selichot with new clothes is an attempt to remind us, as Rabbi Berkowitz teaches us, that we arrive at this time of year, we stand before God, that the new clothes that we wear signals a new attitude, a new approach, a new beginning, a new spiritual wardrobe. In some ways, in our own small way, nodding our head to the way that the Kohen Gadol would change his clothes for Yom Kippur. In a similar way that we change our clothing, we also change, so to speak, our most sacred, precious possession. We adorn our Sifrei Torah at this time of year in white, inspiring us all to see the new possibilities that we might glean, the new roads that we might travel, the new opportunities of learning and service that await us in this coming year. It is, in fact, a tree of life for those who hold on to it. May it renew us and renew our families, refresh our families, Rabbi, in the days ahead. I ask you to please rise in body or spirit. As we open the ark, we remove a Sefer Torah from the ark. We change the mantle of one Torah, dressing it in white. It's Bigdei Lavan. It's colors of the season. Seated. We begin our Selichot service this evening in our books. We are on page 6. The cantor will begin with Ashrei.
Ashrei yoshvei veitecha od yehalelu Ashrei am shekach lo Ashrei am she'Adonai Eloham. We continue with Ashrei on page 7 and 8. Teilat Adonai yedaber pi, vivarech kol basar shem kol shol leolam va'ed. ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם. הללויה. Please rise if you're able. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה גם איראן You may be seated.
The soul is yours, the body is your handiwork. Have mercy on the fruit of your labors. Hanashama lach, the soul is yours. Vehaguf ha'alach, the body is your handiwork. Chusa al amalach, have mercy on the fruit of your labors. Our souls sit warmly with the divine. Our bodies are fashioned by the hands of the ultimate creator. But while we are the keepers, we are the keepers and the users of these souls, of these bodies as we exist on this earth. And this is no easy task. Nurturing and harboring our souls while tending to our bodies is ongoing, difficult work. Making sure that we're safe, making sure that we're cared for. So we ask, please God, show us mercy. This task of caring for our minds, bodies, souls takes focus and dedication. May you be our partner in caring for and cherishing your handiwork. Please join us, Hanashah Malach, page 18.
Tender as a parent with their children, be tender with us, O God of deliverance. Grant blessings to your people. O Lord of hosts, be with us. O God of Jacob, be our stronghold. Blessed is the person who trusts in you. O Lord of hosts, come to our help. O ruler, answer the prayer we utter. Page 28, Kerachem Av.
Kerachem Av Arbanim, Rachem Adonai Ha'ireyov, Ki chikvo Hashamayim ar ha'aretz, Gavar chasto Yireyav, Kerachem Av Arbanim, Rechem Adonai Ha'ireyov, Ki chikvo Hashamayim al ha'aretz, Gavar chasto Yireyav.
We continue on page 30.
Mochel avonot, mochel avonot amo, ma'avir rishon.
הורית לנו לומר 13, זכור לנו היום ברית 13, כי הודעת לערב מקדם כמו שכתוב, וירד אדוני בענן ויתייצב עמו שם, ויקרא בשם אדוני, ויעבור אדוני על פניו, ויקרא אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא
Have you ever wondered why Selichot is such a late-night service? In fact, traditionally, Selichot would be held at midnight. We always begin our Selichot prayers, our pleas for God to forgive us for whatever we've done this year, on the Saturday preceding Rosh Hashanah, and we do it Motzei Shabbat, meaning at night after Shabbat has ended. Rabbi Yisrael Isserlin, a 15th century German Talmud scholar, explained that the divine presence rests on someone who is rejoicing. And Shabbat is a day of joy, so if we really want God's presence to be with us and to listen to our Selichot prayers, we have to pick a moment when we know we've captured God's attention, and that moment is Shabbat, and the time right after. But in addition to our joy and God's presence being with us on Shabbat, we have one other consideration, the fact that we're not supposed to make requests of God on Shabbat. All the other days of the week, when we pray, we can ask God for whatever we want. But on Shabbat, we're supposed to practice feeling content. So we pray in order to praise God, and we pray to thank God, but not to make requests. So our Selichot prayers, which are ultimately requests that God will forgive us and help us change and become better people, our Selichot prayers got pushed to midnight, a time when the rabbis felt God's presence was still lingering due to the joy of Shabbat, but not so close to Shabbat that we might make our requests too early. I want to add one more reason for the timing of our service, not for God's benefit, but for ours. The Selichot prayers are serious. They require deep introspection. Though we'd like to think that we can do that anytime, the reality is that until we are just days away from Rosh Hashanah, days away from facing God's judgment, we may not feel the urgency that we feel at this moment. And sometimes the dark of night allows us to delve deeply into our reflection, perhaps even to shed a tear when something hits close to home. We pray together for God to hear our plea and accept our prayers at this late hour following Shabbat, page 32 and 33. The Sabbath has ended, night has come. We approach you with earnest plea. O you who dwell in the heavens above, bend low and hear our hymn of praise.
Lishma el harina, Lishma el harina, bel hatefila.
Remember Isaac, bound for an offering, in whose stead the ram was slain. Shield his descendants, praying this night. Kindle your power, come to their aid.
Lishma el harina, Lishma el harina, fel hatefila.
Receive all who seek your presence. Let their plea reach your heavenly abode. Do not refuse to hear their prayers, the fervent prayers which they offer. Trembling before you like a woman in travail, like a woman bringing forth her firstborn. They stand in awe before your wonders, before the wonder of your forgiveness.
Hear our voice, Lord our God. Pity us, save us. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. We're on page 36, Shema Kolenu. The ark is closed. We remain standing. We turn to page 40, middle of the page, the confessional Ashamnu.
אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, תהבו לפניך תפילתנו ואל תתעלם את תחינתנו, שייננו עזי פנים וקשי עורף. לומר לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו, אבל אנחנו חטאנו. Ay, 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 אשמנו, בגדנו, גזלנו, דיברנו דופי. Ay, 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 הבינו והרשענו, זדנו, חמסנו, טפלנו שקר. Ay, 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 יצנו רע, כיזבנו, לצנו, מרדנו, ניאצנו, שררנו, אבינו, פשענו, צררנו, קישינו עורף. Ay, 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 רשענו, שיחתנו, תיעבנו, טעינו, תיתנו.
You may be seated. There are certain words that have entered the Hebrew lexicon, the English lexicon, either through the Hebrew, the Yiddish, a word like mensch that you might hear used in a secular context. One such word is shomer. To be a shomer is a word. Well, it was actually made famous in the Big Lebowski when his bowling team neglected to recognize the fact that John Goodman's team was, playing on Shabbos and he was Shomer Shabbos. And what do we mean when we talk about Shomer? A Shomer. One might be Shomer Shabbat, which means they are observant of Shabbat. Someone who is Shomer Kashrut is observant of Kashrut. You might have heard religious individuals who are Shomer Nagia, which means they're observant of the touch. They don't, you have to be careful when you're shaking that person's hand if they're of the opposite sex. You also might be familiar with the Jewish legal notion of a shomer, which is someone who is a watchman protecting your goods. There are different categories the Talmud enumerates: the paid shomer, the shomer schar, the shomer chinam, the unpaid. These are all categories of what a shomer is. If I lend something to someone and I say, you'll be the shomer, you'll watch over that good while it needs protection, which leads to the third one, which actually comes up most often in a pastoral context when someone passes away. And the funeral home will say to me, does a family want a shomer, meaning in that time between the person passing and the person funeral service, there will be a moment where we'll actually have a shomer, someone reading Psalms, because that, according to tradition, is the most vulnerable time of all. A person's soul has passed, but they've not yet received proper burial, and so traditionally we have a shomer, someone to write Psalms and recite them at the time at the person's side. So all of these words are all connected, all of these meanings of shomer. And when we turn to page 46, the prayer that is said normally during the Tachnun, we say here at Selichot services. And each one of these meanings carry resonance at this time as we say Shomer Yisrael. We call God the Shomer of Israel. And what do we mean by this? Well, it could mean because the God as Shomer of Yisrael, Shomer of the people, is the God who is in covenantal relationship with us in mitzvot. We performing mitzvot towards God, God protecting us by way of God's covenantal relationship with us. It could be the idea as in a treasured possession, that we are God's am segula, we are God's treasured possession, and God is watching over us as God would any precious object here at this time. And then, of course, for me, the most resonant, God forbid that, well, let me just say this carefully, that this is the most vulnerable time of our year. This is the moment that we are aware that we exist in that Unatan et Tokef prayer of who will live and who will die, and that our fates hang in the balance. And so when we pray to God as Shomer Yisrael, it's with that same sense of the vulnerability of the human condition that we call on God to protect us, our souls, and our communities at this time. We're on page 46, Shomer Yisrael.
Shomer, Shomer Yisrael, Shemo Sherit Yisrael. Shomer, Shomer Yisrael, Shemo Sherit Yisrael. ועל יאבד, ועל יאבד ישראל, ועל יאבד ישראל האומרים שמע ישראל.
We turn now to Avinu Malkeinu. Is that right? What page are we on? 46. Page 46. Please rise as the ark is open, the middle of the page. Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu v'aneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu v'aneinu, ki ein banu masim. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu v'aneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu v'aneinu, ki ein banu masim.
We remain standing even as the ark is closed. Page 50, Kaddish Shalem.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא תברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב. ואמרו יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמא. ואמרו אמן תתקבל צלותון רוחה ותכון דכל ישראל קודם אבוהון דבשמיא ואמרו אמן. של אמר הבא מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
Zot tefilati lecha, this is my prayer to you, my God. Let me not swerve from life's path, let not my spirit wither and shrivel. It is thirst for you and lose the dew which you sprinkled it when I was young. May my heart be open to every broken soul, to orphan life, to every stumbler wandering unknown and groping in the shadow. Bless my eyes, purify me to see. man's beauty rise in the world. Thank you for joining us. Everyone's cordially invited to a reception in the lobby immediately to follow. And we'll greet Rabbi Zalzmer with a Kiddush, I believe with Philadelphia inflections. We look forward to seeing everyone outside. Have a good evening, everyone.